To stop getting angry at people, you first need a mind that refuses to grab tightly onto moments that do not deserve your energy. Imagine irritation as a rope thrown at you. Most people grab the rope, pull hard, and then wonder why they feel dragged. The shift begins when you decide not to grab anything that tries to pull you into emotional noise. Alan Watts used to say that the real problem is not the event, but the grip you place on it. When you stop gripping, the moment slides right past you without cutting into your peace. This mindset is not passive and it is not weak. It is an active understanding that tension is optional. Think about how many times anger comes not from what someone said, but from how tightly you held onto the meaning behind it. The mind interprets, exaggerates, dramatizes, and constructs entire narratives in seconds. The more you grip the narrative, the heavier it becomes. If you loosen your hold, the entire thing loses weight. A floating moment cannot injure you. When someone snaps at you, complains, criticizes, or throws their frustrations into your atmosphere, the old reflex is to engage, respond, or defend. The new reflex is to pause mentally and say inwardly, I will not grip this. The art is simple but powerful. Picture the situation as if it were happening behind glass. You see it, but it cannot touch you. This separation gives clarity. You begin to recognize that most conflicts are invitations you do not have to accept, and once you decline the invitation, anger has nowhere to attach. What makes this approach transformative is that it works even when the other person tries their hardest to provoke you. Their energy cannot enter you unless you create a doorway for it. Over time, the zero-grip way of thinking rewrites your emotional patterns. You stop feeling responsible for correcting people or controlling their behavior. You stop assuming you must match their tone. You stop letting small shocks shake the entire system. You become someone who sees irritation forming in the distance and lets it pass without involvement. This also builds internal flexibility. You realize that you cannot control the world, but you can absolutely control the weight you give it. And once you master the ability to loosen your internal grip, no one's attitude becomes a threat. Their words float, their tone floats, their behavior floats. Nothing hooks into you, and when nothing hooks, nothing hurts. That is the beginning of becoming unbothered. Imagine walking through life as if you were observing a play unfolding on a stage. Every person you meet is an actor following a script written long before you arrived. They speak their lines, express their emotions, make their mistakes, and react based on past scenes you were never part of. When you adopt this perspective, you stop believing that everyone's behavior is directed at you. Most people are not trying to upset you. They are reenacting old patterns they themselves barely understand. Alan Watts often spoke about the illusion of taking life too seriously, as if every moment was a personal judgment. The theater rule frees you from that illusion. When someone behaves rudely or acts unpredictably, instead of collapsing into their drama, you watch the moment with the same curiosity you would give a character on stage. You study the expression, the tone, the movement, and you realize that none of it is truly about you. The actor is simply performing the role their mind has memorized. This perspective creates distance, and distance gives you emotional stability. Think about how often anger comes from believing that someone's behavior is a direct attack on who you are, but when you see life as a theater, the personal interpretation dissolves. You stop asking, why did they do this to me? You start asking, why does this character always respond that way? This shift turns irritation into observation. Instead of reacting, you learn. Instead of resisting, you witness. And in witnessing, you remain calm. The beauty of this mindset is that it dismantles ego. Anger relies heavily on the belief that everything revolves around you. The moment you stop placing yourself at the center of other people's actions, you stop being bothered by them. A character yelling on a stage does not affect you because you know it is a performance, not a personal attack. This allows you to carry a lighter emotional load. It frees you from the weight of overinterpreting social behavior. As you practice this way of seeing, something deeper happens. You begin to appreciate the diversity of personalities, conflicts, and emotional scripts. You grow more curious and less reactive. You may even develop compassion for those stuck in harsh roles. When you watch rather than absorb, you gain emotional clarity. Anger stops forming. Frustration fades. You move through conversations with steady awareness, and in time, the behavior of others loses its ability to disturb your inner balance. You become the still observer, untouched by the noise on the stage. Most of what people express is not a reflection of you, but an echo of their own unresolved emotions. When someone speaks harshly or reacts impulsively, they rarely react to the present moment. They react to accumulated stress from days, years, or even entire lifetimes. Emotional echo detection means recognizing this truth in real time. It teaches you to pause inwardly and ask one simple question: how much of this belongs to me? The honest answer is almost always very little. When you understand that most negative behavior is not personal, irritation loses its power over you. Think about how many times someone has snapped at you not because of you, but because of hunger, exhaustion, fear, insecurity, or pressure you cannot see. Humans carry layers of invisible weight. When they release it, whoever is closest receives the echo, but the echo is not yours. It only becomes yours if you absorb it. And absorption happens when you assume their reaction is about you. Breaking that assumption is a monumental shift. Alan Watts often reminded people that the world does not revolve around their emotions, and this truth cuts both ways. Just as others are not the center of your inner world, you are not the center of theirs. When anger arises from someone else, they are releasing energy they do not know how to manage. You do not need to catch it. You do not need to respond to it. You do not need to carry it. To master emotional echo detection, you must build the habit of emotional separation. This does not mean becoming cold. It means becoming clear. You acknowledge that the person before you may be dealing with storms you know nothing about. You see their reaction as a sound wave traveling outward, searching for a surface to bounce off. When your mind stays open and still, the wave passes without echoing inside you. This approach also transforms relationships. Instead of reacting to someone's frustration with equal frustration, you respond with steadiness. This steadiness does not enable bad behavior. It simply prevents you from being shaped by it. Over time, people sense your calm and adjust themselves without realizing it. You become a grounding force. The practice also softens judgments. You begin to understand that people are less malicious than they appear. They are simply overwhelmed. And when you stop internalizing their echoes, you rise above the entire emotional exchange. Anger becomes unnecessary. You realize that peace is not something others give you. It is something you protect by refusing to absorb what is not yours. A great deal of human anger comes from defending an identity that feels rigid and easily threatened. Alan Watts often explained that the idea of a fixed I is an illusion because we change constantly, but we cling to this imaginary solid self as if it were fragile glass that must be protected. The moment you accept that your identity is not a stone but a fluid movement, you stop treating every comment or behavior as a threat. A weightless identity reduces the emotional noise that usually triggers irritation. It creates a sense of inner spaciousness where insults, judgments, and misunderstandings cannot stick. To develop this kind of identity, you start by challenging the internal narrative that says, they disrespected me, or they targeted me, or they diminished me. These conclusions assume that your sense of self is small enough to be harmed by the sound someone else makes. But when your identity becomes expansive and flexible, the idea of being offended starts to feel unnecessary. You begin to see that people's comments cannot define you, their tone cannot injure you, their misunderstanding cannot shrink you. Watts taught that the true self is more like an open field than a locked box. Anything that enters the field does not damage it, it simply passes through. When you see yourself this way, you stop clinging to defensive reactions. You stop feeling the urge to correct every misjudgment or confront every negative opinion. Instead, you allow others to express their perceptions without letting those perceptions shape your emotional state. This does not mean you lose confidence or boundaries. It means you stop wasting emotional energy on protecting an identity that does not need protection. It is similar to a mountain standing in the middle of a storm. The wind does not harm the mountain. The rain does not insult it. The storm simply passes while the mountain remains unmoved. You become that mountain when you detach from the illusion of a fragile identity. When you make your identity weightless, you stop attributing too much meaning to how others behave. Their reactions become reflections of their own world rather than mirrors held up to yours. Someone ignoring you, interrupting you, or disagreeing with you no longer feels like a personal attack. It feels like something happening within the flow of human dynamics. You witness it without absorbing it. This mindset also gives you the freedom to move lightly through social environments. You stop trying to prove yourself. You stop trying to defend your worth. You stop seeking validation from unstable sources. A weightless identity creates emotional immunity. It lets you step into conversations without carrying the fear of being judged. When nothing weighs down the self, nothing can pull it down. Anger loses its fuel because there is no rigid ego holding the spark. To remain unbothered by people, you need a mind that functions like a well-designed shock absorber. Life is full of sudden emotional bumps, harsh tones, rude behavior, unexpected criticism, judgment, impatience, and misunderstanding. Most people are shaken because their inner suspension system is stiff. The smallest shock sends vibrations through their entire mental state. But when you develop emotional shock absorbers, these same experiences barely register. You feel the bump, but it does not shake your peace. This approach begins with awareness. Awareness is the cushioning that prevents impact from turning into irritation. When someone tries to provoke you, awareness lets you see the moment clearly before reacting. You notice the tension rising inside you, but you also notice that you do not have to respond. You give yourself a moment to breathe, and that breath absorbs the shock. It keeps the emotional impact from spreading through your thoughts. Alan Watts often suggested that inner stillness is not about escaping noise, but about becoming the space where noise cannot distort your balance. To build mental shock absorbers, you must practice softening your initial response. Instead of tightening internally, you let your mind stay flexible. Flexibility allows the emotional wave to bend around you instead of crashing into you. Imagine two people walking through the same situation. One reacts instantly, taking everything personally, letting every word feel like friction. The other moves with a calm inner suspension, absorbing the pressure without resistance. The difference is not in what happens to them, but in how their inner systems handle the movement. Emotional shock absorbers make you resilient, steady, and unshakable. This skill also prevents anger from escalating. When someone is rude, their intention is often to create a reaction. If you absorb the shock gently, the reaction dies before it begins. This is not suppression. Suppression is rigid and eventually breaks. Absorption is fluid and never breaks. You allow the moment to exist without letting it shape your mood. Over time, your emotional suspension becomes stronger. Situations that once triggered you no longer faze you. People sense your steadiness and unconsciously adjust their tone. You become someone whose presence calms tension rather than escalating it. This kind of presence carries natural authority because it is grounded, not reactive. The shock absorber mindset also protects your long-term emotional health. You save enormous mental energy by refusing to let small interactions dictate your inner climate. You learn to differentiate between genuine threats and trivial bumps. Most things that disturb us are bumps pretending to be earthquakes. When you stop giving them that power, you stop suffering from them. Imagine walking through a dense fog. The fog surrounds you, limits your visibility, and makes the world feel confusing. Yet you do not fight it, you do not shout at it, you do not attempt to push it away with your hands. You simply continue moving forward, knowing the fog cannot cling to you and has no intention of harming you. This is the fog walking approach, a way of dealing with people's behavior without internal conflict. When someone behaves rudely, unpredictably, or emotionally, most people treat that behavior as something solid, something personal, something heavy. But human behavior is more like fog than a wall. It looks dense, but it is weightless. The only time it feels heavy is when you assume it is meant for you. Once you recognize that someone's attitude is not a physical obstacle, you walk through it without resistance. This mindset requires detachment from assumptions. When someone gives you a cold answer or an irritated tone, your mind may rush to interpret it as rejection or disrespect. But if you walk through the moment like fog, you let the behavior exist without attaching stories to it. You stop assuming meaning where there is none. You stop believing that you must respond emotionally. You simply pass through. Alan Watts emphasized the power of letting life flow rather than resisting it. Fog cannot be removed by force. The more you try to fight it, the more you lose clarity. But when you relax and keep moving, the fog eventually clears on its own. In the same way, people's moods and reactions will change with time. There is no need to take them as permanent or personal. Walking through fog teaches you patience. It reminds you that not every unclear moment requires immediate understanding. Sometimes the best response is simply continued movement. You choose peace over interpretation. You choose clarity over reaction. You choose to let the moment exist without letting it grip your emotions. This approach also helps you avoid emotional entanglement. When you see behavior as fog, you stop clinging to it, analyzing it, or replaying it in your mind. You free yourself from unnecessary mental loops. You create distance between you and the behavior. In that distance, irritation fades. Over time, fog walking makes you emotionally untouchable. People's confusion, criticism, or negativity no longer enters your inner world. You become someone who can move through the emotional weather of others without losing your direction. You stop being affected by temporary moods. You treat everything as a passing condition rather than a personal message. This is one of the most powerful ways to remain calm in a chaotic world. In the end, the real victory is not winning arguments or correcting people. The real victory is walking through the world without letting its noise settle inside you. You have a mind that can either imprison you or free you, and the moment you learn to watch it with clarity, something remarkable happens. Reactions lose their grip, irritations lose their shape. You stop being pushed, dragged, or pulled by the moods of others. Alan Watts often reminded us that life is a flowing movement, not a battlefield, and when you let yourself move with it instead of wrestling every moment, you return to a state of natural ease, a state where anger feels unnecessary and peace feels like your default setting, not a goal you must chase. If you reach this point in the video, it means you are ready to shift inward, to walk lighter, to see things as they are, rather than as your fears paint them. Let this be the moment you choose awareness over reaction, stillness over noise, understanding over irritation. Thank you for walking this path with me today on the Way of Watts. Until we meet again, keep your mind open, your presence steady, and your inner world free.